Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the special meeting of August 25th, 2022 to order. I would like to thank our live simultaneous Spanish interpreters for joining us tonight. We are live streaming our meeting as well, which can be accessed from the district website. I know there is a lot of public interest in tonight's agenda, which is the start of an important conversation that will continue on for the next couple of months. Our next regular meeting is on September 15th, and public comment will be available at that time. Over the next 2 months, there will also be a number of opportunities for community engagement specific to school consolidation. Your voices are important, and we did not want the lack of a public comment opportunity at tonight's meeting to create any confusion about opportunities in the future. With that, roll call, please. Ms. Lang?
Ms. Miller?
Here.
Ms. Parker? Here. Ms. Reed?
Here.
Ms. Schooley?
Here.
Dr. Varda? Here.
Board, is there a motion to approve tonight's meeting agenda?
I move that we approve the agenda for tonight's special meeting for August 25th, 2022.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any objection or discussion? Hearing none, it has been moved and seconded to approve the agenda for the special meeting of August 25th, 2022. Roll call, please, Ms. Lang.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Reed?
Yes.
Ms. Schooley?
Yes.
Dr. Varda?
Yes.
All right, the agenda is approved. Our first and only agenda item this evening is to hear the district's recommendation on Phase 1 of Regional Opportunities for Thriving Schools. Regional Opportunities for Thriving Schools is an initiative that district staff and the superintendent devised in the spring of 2022 to respond to this board's request for a comprehensive plan to ensure thriving schools with enrollment to support extraordinary student experiences across our district. The purpose of the meeting today is for the Board of Education to receive the district's recommendation on school consolidations as required by Board Policy FCB in order for this board to vote on school consolidations on November 10th, 2022. Superintendent Dorland, will you please introduce our presenters, and I will turn it over to you to outline what we will hear from your staff tonight.
Thank you, President Schooley. I want to start off by sharing with you that our school principals are not here with us this evening. They are tending to the needs of their staff members who learned about what is being recommended for their schools late this afternoon, and families who are receiving this information as we speak. Our staff present tonight is here to share a recommendation to consolidate 16 elementary schools in Jeffco, impacting a total of 38 schools in 12 articulation areas. As your superintendent, as a lifelong educator, and also as a Jeffco mom and the daughter of a Jeffco retiree, this is incredibly difficult and emotional work for me to lead. We all love our elementary schools, and the broader Jeffco community has come alongside our schools for decades to support students and educators who are their friends and their neighbors. Our Jeffco community is very much like a family, which makes tonight's recommendations so very difficult. As some of you remember, the day I was appointed as Jeffco Public Schools Superintendent at the board meeting on April 21st, in April of 2021, it was the same meeting that the district announced the forthcoming closure of Allendale Elementary School. In my 16 months in this role, the impact of declining enrollment has been a constant pain point, especially for our smallest elementary schools who are struggling and have been struggling for many years to provide a thriving experience for our students and our educators. And this is not because of the individuals in those buildings, it is because of the lack of resources that these schools have to provide the program we all want for our students. Then earlier this spring, the Board of Ed once again faced the difficult reality of small elementary school that was no longer sustainable. The enrollment at Fitzmaurice Elementary, you'll remember, fell to below 100 students after round one of our enrollment process. With your votes to close Fitzmaurice, you directed me to create a comprehensive plan for elementary school consolidations that would limit the ongoing need to close unsustainably small schools on an individual, emergency, and last-minute basis. Tonight, our staff will walk through our recommended first phase of the Regional Opportunities for Thriving Schools, which addresses excess capacity in our elementary schools. I know that our district has had a challenging history with school consolidation decisions. I have taken time to ask questions, listen, learn, and build in lessons from the past so that we are smarter today than we were yesterday. Our recommendation is not simply a list of schools, but it includes steps to support students, families, and staff who are impacted through open, honest dialogue about what communities want for their students and how we can best bring two communities together as one more robustly resourced and thriving school. With that, I'm going to turn this over to our Chief of Schools, David Weiss, and Chief of Strategy and Communication, Lisa Relu.
Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent Dorland. I'd like to thank the board for the opportunity tonight to present these recommendations. I also want to thank the central teams that have spent countless hours, as Ms. Dorland just mentioned, researching, planning, and pulling together these thoughtful recommendations. There's been a lot of work put into what you're about to see tonight. I want to thank our principals, the principals that are in our impacted buildings and also the principals that are not. Our principals have been a part of these conversations over the last few weeks, and they've led with integrity, and they've led incredibly well. I also want to give the board confidence that our leaders are prepared to do this work. They're ready to do this work. Our principals are ready to do this work, and the leaders centrally are here to support them. The schools that we're discussing tonight are staffed with excellent educators, and these recommendations are not a reflection of the quality of the educators in these buildings. We thank them for the work that they will continue to do to support our students and our communities. And lastly, I want to thank our community for their continued partnership that we plan on engaging over the next couple of months before we get to the night of the vote. And again, the reason that we are here tonight is not the fault of any one person. It really is a result of a changing community. And so I thank you for the opportunity again to present, and I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Relu to lead us through the presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. And I'd like to also introduce my colleague who's here tonight, Ty Young. He is our project manager on the strategy team and specifically working on this work. As we get into the presentation that we're about to share with you tonight, we are going to be talking about some of the things that our schools don't have. What I want to be clear about is what our schools do have. They have students and families who love them. They have committed and dedicated educators and staff who show up to provide extraordinary experiences for students every day. They have visionary school leaders who inspire, and there's absolutely no joy in what we are presenting here tonight, but it is the work that we believe needs to be done. So the purpose of this presentation tonight is for the Board of Education to receive the district staff recommendation on school consolidations as required by Board Policy FCB in order for the board to vote on school consolidations on November 10th, 2022. Jeffco Public Schools is the second largest school district in Colorado, serving 8% of the K-12 students in our state. We have 157 schools on 168 campuses, and our district is divided into 17 articulation areas. Jeffco Public Schools saw the largest decline of any school district in Colorado during COVID. We lost more than 5,000 students between 2019 and 2022. But this is not the only reason that we are here to make this recommendation tonight. Census data shows that while the population has been increasing in Jeffco and Jefferson County, at the same time, the population of school-aged children has decreased by almost 30,000. In addition to that, the underage 5 population has decreased, and we're seeing very low birth rates. We're not alone in this. A lot of urban areas across the country, urban areas in our neighboring districts are also dealing with enrollment declines that are impacting their school districts. A new poll from Education Next found that during the pandemic, public school districts lost nearly 2 million students across the country. Jeffco has the capacity to serve 96,000 students in our traditional in our traditional district managed schools, and we currently serve 69,000. In May, we shared with the board that there were 49 elementary schools with student populations under 250 and/or a building utilization of 60% or less that combined had more than 10,000 empty seats. 2 elementary schools in the last 2 years, as Superintendent Dorland mentioned, have been closed in off-cycle, meaning outside of our enrolled Jeffco process, due to unsustainable student enrollment. As a district, we believe that a thriving district where all students achieve their biggest dreams, to have that, we must build on our many bright spots and confront our challenges through the lens of opportunity. Regional Opportunities for Thriving Schools is an initiative that we deployed in the spring of 2022 to respond to the board's request for a comprehensive plan for consolidating schools to ensure that schools have enrollment to support extraordinary student experiences across our district. The scope of the Phase 1 recommendation is Jeffco District Managed Elementary Schools, K2, K5, and K6. What is out of scope, what we are not discussing today and will not be discussing until after November of this year, is the use of facilities. That discussion will begin in January of 2023 based on the decisions that the board makes in November. Secondary schools, including K8s. This work will begin in January when we will publish secondary school data on our FCB dashboard for the public to see. Adjusting school boundaries, articulation areas, etc., is not something we are asking the board to consider for the November vote. Our timeline is as follows. We were required in June to publish the FCB dashboard where the public could see, the board and the public could see data related to the factors that are listed in FCB could be seen publicly. Tonight, we deliver our staff's recommendation. In September and October, we will have community-based engagements and conversations on the transitions that would be required should the board consider and vote to pass this recommendation. There will be public comment opportunities for every school that is recommended for closure the last week in October, and the board will vote on November 10th. So going into a little bit more of why we are bringing these recommendations to you today. According to the state demographer, the number of school-age children in Jeffco peaked in 2001. More than 1/3 of our elementary schools were built between 1946 and 1964 in the height of the baby boom. On average, excluding our mountain schools, our elementary schools are 1.3 miles apart. We also have some choice data listed here in terms of the choice patterns for our elementary school families. There are significant inequities currently in per pupil funding in our elementary schools. If you look at our FCB dashboard, you will see that the least per pupil funding is $13,870 and the most is $19,197. The district has made initial investments in specialized programs to attract students that not only has not resulted in more students in a lot of cases, but we have also been unable to fully resource due to declining enrollment in our district. Small, underutilized schools, even with the supplemental funding that we are providing, which is siphoned from larger schools, is failing to provide the extraordinary student experiences for students and educators that we want for every school. Our focus on extraordinary student experiences and a culture of instructional excellence require foundational staffing that cannot be afforded without this consolidation plan. The aim is fewer, more equitably resourced elementary school programs. Now we're going to go into some of our challenges. We want to be very transparent that Jeffco Public Schools has spent almost $16.4 million, or 2% of the 2018 bond-funded projects in schools that we are recommending tonight for consolidation. Additionally, these schools have received grants and gifts of support from community organizations. We have, however, not spent $12.2 million on projects that we've deferred because we knew that this work was coming. There are families who were impacted by the Allendale and Fitzmaurice closures who will be impacted again. There are staff members who have been through previous school closures who will be impacted again. Many of the closing schools are walk-only schools, and while their new schools will be close by, it is likely that many of them will need to take the bus. And while we can offer students the opportunity to move with their peers, we cannot guarantee that for our staff. The opportunity we have, given our unique context here in Jeffco, is that in most cases, we are able to move all students from one school to another, allowing them to remain with their peers in their existing articulation area. Two small schools can become one more sustainable and robustly resourced school. We talk about what we're looking for in a thriving student and educator experience, and that includes things like at least one class per grade level, but hopefully two. Consistent planning time, full-time supports where they might have part-time, half-time supports now, social emotional learning and mental health services, operational budgets to support materials and resources, full-time AMP, art, music, PE, designated to each building, family engagement, sports and staffing in each building, and easier to fill full-time positions, as our not full-time positions or part-time positions are often hard to fill. There is an opportunity also with cost savings. As many of you know and have heard, and our board knows very personally, that we have to have a plan to reduce our reserve spending, and this is going to help us do that. We anticipate ongoing annual savings brought forward on this package to be $8.5 to $12 million a year. So here's our consolidation criteria. On August 15th, 2022, the school had an enrollment of less than 220 K2, K5, or K6 students, or is utilizing 45% or less of the capacity of its facility, and there's an elementary school or schools less than 3.5 miles away that can serve the students from the closing school in the current articulation area. So the first or second thing up there, either enrollment or utilization can be true, and there must be another place where we can serve those students within 3.5 miles. We have previously brought before this board this idea of urgent priority and high priority runway partnerships. As we started to look at this work, we were focused on the schools that we believe are currently unsustainable and may not be able to last another year given their resources and enrollment. As we started to look a little deeper, we also felt that given the way the district's history of doing this work, it was important to look forward at the schools that were quickly becoming unsustainable, where we have the opportunity to increase long-term sustainability by bringing two school communities together. What we know from the past in terms of schools having been put on lists and no action being taken is that there has been a constant anxiety in our community related to low enrollment numbers. Schools asking, are we next? Will we be open again next year? We felt it was important, and out of respect for our entire community, our families, and our staff, that we take an opportunity to do the work that needs to be done now so that threat does not linger for our elementary schools. So the consolidation details. There are two categories for each consolidation: the school that is closing and the new neighborhood school. Center program locations or relocations are addressed. Preschool sites will be publicly published by articulation area by November 1st as part of a district-wide PK plan for the 23-24 school year that considers Colorado's universal preschool legislation. Middle and high school boundaries will continue to be dictated by address. So any students and families involved in consolidations, their middle and high school will remain what it is today. Transportation policies will apply regarding walk and ride distances and crossing major intersections. And while we have identified a new neighborhood school, families will certainly be able to use the choice process to choose a different school. The staff at the new neighborhood school will remain there, and the staff from the school that is closing will have an opportunity to interview for positions at the new boundary school and other district schools. The principal for the new neighborhood school is named in the consolidation information that is presented tonight. In all cases, it is the principal at the receiving school. 23-24 principal hiring will begin early in December of 2022 to consider, given the number of interim principal roles we have this year, to consider our internal candidates for permanent positions for the 23-24 school year. I want everyone, this board, and everyone out there to know that we are committed to a strong 22-23 school year in all schools and will provide additional supports to schools that are closing as needed to ensure they have what they need to provide extraordinary student experiences this year, make everyday work for students and staff. As Superintendent Dorland mentioned, here is what we are going to ask that's going to come before the board in November. On November 10th, Jeffco Board of Education will take one vote on the following package: the closure of 16 elementary schools and 12 articulation areas, impacting a total of 38 elementary schools. On average, the FRL percentage of schools impacted is 50%. There are 10 non-Title I schools and 6 Title I schools involved. We anticipate this impacting 422 FTE, and we say FTE because we do have some staff involved who are paired with other schools, and so we are trying not to count one staff member more than once. Our students, we believe this will be an impact of about 2,500 students, K through 4 and K through 5. What we have taken out of this is any students in the schools that may be closing that their 5th graders would be going on to a middle school for 6th grade, or in the case of our K-6 schools, the 6th graders who would be moving on to a school next year. And then we have 117 center program students who are impacted. If consolidations are approved, Jeffco will have 67 district-managed elementary schools. Elementary schools will on average be 1.5 miles away instead of 1.3, excluding our mountain area schools. When we came to the board again in the spring, we brought this number of 49 elementary schools with student populations under 250 and/or building utilizations of 60% or less that combined had 10,600 empty seats. Should the board approve this recommendation, we will have 16 elementary schools with student populations under 250 and/or building utilizations of 60% or less that combined have 3,900 empty seats. It will take our capacity from 96,000 students to 89,000 students. So as we think about our projected enrollment in the schools that we are consolidating, it's important to understand, I shared before, the district average, 45% of families choice out of their neighborhood elementary schools and 38% choice in. At schools recommended for closure, on average, 57% of families choice out of their neighborhood elementary school and 41% choice in. Here are the assumptions we are using to calculate potential enrollment at the new neighborhood school. At the high end, we are taking the enrollment of the receiving school plus 80% of the total number of students currently attending the closing school. At the low end, we're taking the enrollment of the receiving school plus 35% of the choice-in students at the school that will be closing, and 50% of the school that will be closing the boundary students who live in their boundary and go to that school. So here's the list here's our recommendation, our 16 schools. In Alameda, Emory will go into Lasley, and the center program at Emory will be relocated to Rose Stein. Where there isn't a center program listed, if there is a center program, for example, Peck has a center program that is just able to move to Seacrest. We had to make other provisions when we were moving one school into another school that already had a center program, as our philosophy around center programs is that we do not have more than one center program at a school, two different center programs. So we have Peck going into Seacrest, Thompson going into Swanson, The Thompson Center program will go to Hackberry Hill if needed, and we say if needed because it's very few students, and it's a particular program that students they need it at one time and they may not need it at another. So we will be working with those families individually. In Arvada West, we have Campbell. So this is the one place where we were unfortunately unable to find one solution. So Campbell students will go to Fremont and Vanderhoof, and the Campbell Center program will go to Vanderhoof. We are also making the recommendation tonight that Campbell become an ECE center in 23-24, as both Fremont and Vanderhoof do not have ECE programs currently. In Bear Creek will be Pfeiffer into Kendallview, Dakota Ridge, Colorado into Powderhorn. Green Mountain Elementary School will go into Foothills, and the Green Mountain Center program will be relocated to Belmar. In Evergreen, this is the 1-24-25 move. This is a special circumstance where we have a K-2 school and a 3-5 school, Bergen Meadow and Bergen Valley. We will be building an addition onto Bergen Valley to serve that community with a PK5 school. Both of those schools currently share a principal. In Jefferson, Mulholm will go into Lumberg. In Lakewood, Glennon Heights into Belmar. The Glennon Heights Center program will go to Hutchinson. In Pomona, Parr will go into Little, Stanley Lake, Sheridan Green into Ryan, Stanley Lake again, Witt into Lucas, and then we have 3 moves in Wheat Ridge. Vivian into Stover, with Vivian Center program going to Maple Grove. Wilmer Davis into Stevens, and Color Strand into Prospect Valley. So I'm going to take you quickly. We have a slide, which this deck is posted online at this time, and you can go through the various slides. Each slide here has the criteria for why the school is being recommended for closure and consolidation. And it talks about the criteria, the school for closure, the new neighborhood school, estimated enrollment and utilization post-consolidation, the distance between the 2 schools, the principal, the center program type and location. And we have also listed here, as required by policy FCB, the public comment details, time, and location, where the board will hear from community members at that school. So I'm not going to go through, I read off the list, I'm not going to go through each of these, but I recommend that the board and other members of our community take time to examine the situation in each articulation area and with each school. I want to talk a little bit about what's next. So we talked about the unfortunate nature of having to impact our Allendale and Fitzmaurice families again. You can see here how many families we are looking at. We have identified these families, and we are going to work with them in the next couple of weeks to understand if they would like to make a transition this fall to the school that they would be going to next fall, so that they don't have to yet again go through another school closure. Per policy FCB, we are also required to have FCB committees. So every school recommended for closure will have an FCB committee that includes at least 4 and up to 7 members of the school community. And then we have listed out, and is also available on our website. I recommend you go to our website, the Regional Opportunities for Thriving School page, where it outlines this information. We're working with principals to set up these FCB committees. The FCB committees will be helping to spread awareness of opportunities for community conversations to maximize participation. We're also asking them to produce a report about the challenges and opportunities associated with the recommendations. The challenges and opportunities associated with the recommended consolidation based on the input received from the communities in September and October. And those reports will be provided directly to the superintendent and will be made available to the Board of Education. The district's partners at Keystone Policy Center will host 90-minute in-person community conversations in September and October at each school recommended for closure. So each school will have 2 conversations. All members of the school community are invited to attend, and neighbors are also welcome to join the conversation. District representatives at that September meeting will explain the process and factors that led to the recommendation and answer questions about the process. Community conversations are not being held to assess or debate whether to close any particular school or the process used to make recommendations to the board. A significant amount of time at the community conversations, especially in October, will be committed to looking forward aspirationally about what's possible. You'll also be offering Spanish-only sessions held at some schools, and live interpreters will be available as requested so our stakeholders can speak and listen in the language of their heart. Public hearings. Per policy FCB, every school recommended for closure will have a public hearing with the Board of Education prior to the vote. We will be listing all of this information about signups and how many speakers we expect to be able to accommodate on our website. The district is also going to work with schools to offer transportation from their schools to the location of the public comment session to ensure accessibility for all families. Taking care of our staff is incredibly important to us. The district will follow JCEA and JESPA master agreements to support staff members with navigating employment opportunities in the 23-24 school year. That includes agreements about probationary and non-probationary teachers and mutual consent positions. The district will offer opportunities for our certified staff to gain endorsements in hard-to-staff areas during the 23-24 school year and no cost to them. So as all of you know, we have many positions even starting this school year that remain unfilled, and we're hoping that by our current staff getting additional endorsements in this current school year, it will make them incredibly competitive for positions in the 23-24 school year. Our HR department is prepared to support our certified and ESP staff with resume writing and interview skills, and we're partnering with both associations to discuss potential internal-only hiring season and events prior to consideration of external applicants. Hiring for principals, as I said previously, will begin in December of 2022. Families. We are going to take care of our families in this process, meet with them, understand their desires, and help them through the choice process. There will be opportunities for organized school tours at new neighborhood schools. Of course, our student success team is ready to be in touch and work with our center program families. And families will have access to a staff member to assist them with the 23-24 school year enrollment decision. And as we've talked about before, we'll help them also understand where they have transportation. So for your November 10th vote, the district will put forward the following. One package recommendation for the closure of 16 elementary schools. A request for BoE support, the board's support, to initiate an RFP for community conversations on facility use beginning in January of 2023. An RFP for a study of school boundaries, district articulation areas, review of school programming and analysis of bus fees, building utilization evaluations, and choice patterns and trends. We believe this work is especially important in the context that we all live in, which is a choice context. And we need to understand how these things should work given the patterns that are of choice that our families use. Phase 2 of Regional Opportunities for Thriving Schools will launch in January of 2023 with us adding secondary schools to the FCB dashboard with the intent of bringing forward a recommendation to consolidate secondary schools, including K-8 schools, in the fall of 2023. New criteria will be developed for Phase 2. So the criteria, I just want to be very clear that the criteria that we are using in Phase 1 will not be the criteria that we are using in Phase 2. When we talk about our capacity to serve 89,000 students, down from 96,000, we do not believe that there are 89,000 students out there that we can just recruit into our district. We will need to make further consolidation recommendations in order to best resource all of our schools, our elementary, secondary, and K-8 schools. Finally, I want to say that barring unforeseen circumstances that further accelerate enrollment declines, this recommendation, we believe, should level set elementary schools. We do not anticipate an additional district-wide consolidation recommendation for elementary schools K-5 or K-6 in the near future. I do want to be transparent that since we have criteria of what we're looking for in elementary schools, We may have to consider individual elementary school decisions, but we do not anticipate an additional district-wide consolidation recommendation for these schools. So with that, I would like to turn it back over to Superintendent Dorland.
Thank you, Ms. Ralou. I want to end the staff presentation this evening by once again acknowledging the difficulty of these decisions. This has been an extremely challenging day for district staff, and I want to express care and concern for the 16 school communities that found out late this afternoon about this recommendation. I want to thank our school leaders and our district leaders who are side by side with our school leaders in sharing this news with school staffs. This is not an easy recommendation for any of us to make. We take this very seriously, and we know that at this point in time and moving forward, there's a lot of emotion around this recommendation in our Jeffco community. We don't take that lightly, and our hearts go out to the 16 communities who are processing through this news at this time. I want to thank those of you who are here tonight, present with us and listening to this recommendation. And I'd like to thank those of you who are listening from home as we've live streamed this recommendation and this meeting. I know you all care deeply about our schools just as we do. And I thank you for your support and your interest and your care and concern for our schools. I also just want to say thank you to our board for your leadership, and thank you for your consideration of this recommendation.
Thank you, team. Much appreciated. This is our first opportunity for us as a board to receive the district's and superintendent's recommendation around school closures and consolidations. We have the opportunity for comments, questions, clarifications as we begin a process of reflection and dialogue and decision making that will go up until our November vote. So I open it up to any board members who would have anything on their mind, comments, questions, or otherwise. Ms. Reed.
I want to thank our district leaders so much for this work. This is the right work, but it's hard work. And this board asked you to do it. And you stepped up to the plate in a pretty spectacular way, I think. When I was running for office, people asked me how I felt about closing schools. And my answer then and my answer now is that it's very hard. There's no two ways about that. It's also necessary if we're going to give our schools the resources they need and give every single child the education they deserve. But it was really important to me that the process be transparent, that the metrics be clear and fair, and that people would be able to see it coming and that they would have input into what happened next. And you've done every single one of those things. The dashboard really helped people to see early on what was going on. The metrics are very clear. I know it can feel unfair if it's your school because it just hurts. But I really believe that these metrics were as fair as we could make them. And the plans that you have in place to support our students and our staff and our families through this is extraordinary. So I'm just in awe of the work that you've done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Other board members? Ms. Parker.
I'd like to start by thanking Ms. Ralou and her team for all the work that you put into this effort. A comprehensive view of the historical data and the demographic trends is critical to the board's decision, and your work has made clear the magnitude of our problem and the urgent need to take action. Next, I want to express my deep appreciation to the principals and staff members who will be impacted by the board's decision to close their school. One of the most rewarding things I did as a new board member was visiting schools in my district, especially the elementary schools. where the close emotional connections between our youngest students and their teachers, paras, office staff, lunchroom workers, librarians, virtually every adult that they came into contact with during the school day was so apparent. But I learned something else from my school visits. Our principals were under enormous pressure, not only to meet academic expectations, but also to find more students to fill their classrooms. In addition to being good administrators, they needed to be savvy marketers and advertisers. It was almost as if they were restaurant owners having to compete for customers, determining whether they needed to change their menu from steak to seafood, contemplating standing outside the school with a sandwich sign on, or learning how to juggle for the school open house. This district's commitment to closures and consolidations will result in fewer schools, but all the schools should have the necessary resources to provide an equitable, quality education to our students and to allow our school staff to focus on academics, not marketing. Finally, I want to address the families who will face unanticipated changes and disruptions in their lives. Many of you made careful choices on which school was right for your child. Some of you chose a specific community when you were buying your first home because of the neighborhood school. Many of you have been active volunteers in your schools, being a room mom, a watchdog dad, joining the PTA or SAC committee, heading fundraising efforts. And many of you rely on center programs for your child's particular needs or before and after school programs for childcare while you work. Your children, our students, have learned so much more than reading, writing, and arithmetic at their elementary schools. They've learned the school mottos, the school values. They've contributed artwork to the school halls, taken part in school traditions, made friends, participated in school plays and concerts. Our district has a responsibility to do everything we can to facilitate the coming transitions in support of our students, our families, and our staff. I believe the work that was done in putting together this presentation tonight demonstrates just such a commitment. As sorry as I am that we have come to this point, I'm equally optimistic that our school district will emerge stronger because of the steps we are taking. Thank you, team.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. Other board members? No? Dr. Berta?
Thank you very much to the district for all the hard work in presenting what I see as a very comprehensive plan for our way forward. I think some people expected a list, and I think we got something quite different, especially in the way that you've laid out thoughtfulness about centers and where kids will go and the choices that they might make. As a parent, I empathize with the way that this feels, but I'm very hopeful that what we're doing is going to create a district that is setting our kids up for long-term success. I really look forward to hearing more in our community engagement meetings from all involved and how we can do that. I think some great ideas will come from those meetings. And I just want to specifically focus as we do that work on taking care of our teachers and staff and our families and kids. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Berta. Ms. Miller?
First, I'd like to thank the board. I think we as a board faced a challenge that came at us as a wave that has been kind of building for more than a decade. When our peak was in 2001, and we continued to build schools, and we continued to defer from one year to the next, we saw it happening. Pleasant View was the canary in the coal mine, and we just continued to pass it on down, expecting that something else would change. So Superintendent Dorland, I know you went through the Allendale experience the first day you were here. And then we went through the Fitzmaurice. And you said no more, and this board said no more. We've run out of road. We have nowhere else to go but to do this hard work. And I know, President Stephanie, that you lived and breathed it. And you know how hard it is for communities and what they're going to go through. I do also want to recognize that, we do have the loss of students, and we need to understand why. So thank you very much for the next round of thinking about and identifying why we are losing students, because they're not just choicing out of their neighborhood school, they're choicing out of Jeffco. And that's going to be critical for us as a board to be able to deploy resources that are needed in order to sustain the academic outcomes and excitement that our parents and our children are seeking, but are finding it someplace else. I also know that this range of savings that has been provided in the package is a range. And we are facing a significant deficit of 30-some plus million dollars this next year with our deficit spend and looking into the future. So although this is a third of what that deficit looks like, we have a significant amount of work to do in our budget that will impact what happens in our schools. So it's not just the changing of the structure of how many kiddos we have in our schools, but it's also the costs of delivery and what those expectations will be. So this, to me, is the beginning of the hard work, and we have a great starting point, I think, upon which you and your staff have built for us to start with, recognizing that I don't want to say this is the easy part, but there's going to be significant work in the next number of months to address our deficit spend. So thank you again, and I'm glad that we have stopped the bleed or the death by 1,000 cuts, and that we are really working as a group to make sure that we move forward, no longer pushing it down, but rather having a long-range plan, not a long-range dialogue that continues. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Rounding us out, I appreciate the hard work that's gone into this as well as a recommendation from you, Superintendent Dorlin, and a lot of people doing a lot of hard work. I also just want to recognize that we have a history of a lack of decision-making around the issue of school consolidations and closures that has had lasting and significant impacts on a lot of our schools and has dictated to at least a substantial amount how parents have chosen or not to enroll their students in specific schools out of fear of, will my school be on the list next time around? And that is unkind. It has been unkind to communities to do that and has not helped at all in our effort to create thriving experiences for students over the years. So this as a starting point for the discernment that will follow, I find to be not a joyful moment at all, but I take comfort in the fact that there is a strong basis for which we will be making these decisions that will provide the transparency and clarity that our communities, our parents, and our school leadership and communities absolutely deserve moving forward. I also just want to recognize that there are certain communities and certain students and families specifically that are more impacted than others in this recommendation plan for a host of different reasons, and not calling that out would be disingenuous. And attending to that and making sure that the care that goes into the what's next and hearing the voice around the community conversations and how we provide structures and support for those communities particularly is critically important to me. So in part because I live in one of those communities, but also because I care about all of these kids. I also want to say that I look forward to and will make a strong call for the participation of the legislators, the city managers, the mayors, the city councilors that represent all of the municipalities that are within our district and county. This challenge that we have is not just a school problem. It's not a public school issue solely. It has a lot to do with how schools are funded, with zoning laws that prevent or encourage housing and children coming in and moving into neighborhoods. There are a host of other factors that we really need strong partnership from our elected officials and others that represent our government entities to be able to work with. And I look forward to those conversations and to creating those partnerships for our kids. That is all that I have. Are there any further comments or questions? We will have, as I mentioned in the beginning, and has been mentioned by others, a lot of dialogue that is to come. This is the beginning of a process, not the end. Are there any other comments or questions? Or Superintendent Dorland, do you have anything else you'd like to contribute? Great. With that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.